if you want to kick us off.
Yes, absolutely. So good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The AirPods sometimes don't connect right. So thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to call this meeting to order. This is the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee meeting. And as usual, I will pass the baton on to Catherine Magana for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, everybody. If you'd like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And thank you, Catherine, for holding the flag. I noticed that. That was awesome.
Nice touch.
To make sure we were pledging to the flag. Great. So a little bit of business out of the way before we begin our exciting program. We sent minutes and would like to have the minutes approved from our last meeting. Hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at them and ensure that they were correct and that you were listed if you were there, your vote was counted correctly. Can I entertain a motion? Somebody like to present a motion to approve the minutes?
I would have moved that we approve the minutes of the last meeting as written.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. And a second?
Second.
I'm looking for who that was.
Phil.
Phil. Thank you, Phil. So we have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? No, let's call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Great, thank you. Any no's? Okay, and we have, of course, the typical abstentions. So the minutes will reflect that the minutes, this month's minutes will reflect that last month's minutes were passed unanimously with government officials and government agency representatives abstaining. Thank you. So no worries. Okay, we have a great guest speaker to kick us off. We'll be having...
Teresa, do you want to do quick introductions?
Oh, yes, sorry. We always begin with self-introductions, and it's my favorite part. We have less than 30 people, so that means we can do it the way that we typically do, where folks are self-introducing, but I will also help facilitate that because just in case people aren't watching, I'll start first and pass the baton on to the next person. And if you wouldn't mind, when you close your self-introduction, please call the next person. My name is Teresa Acosta. I'm president of a consulting company here in Carlsbad called Acosta and Partners. I'm very proud to be the chair right now, co-chair officially, but our chair had to step down, of the Government Affairs Committee. And I'll pass it along to our board member representative, Catherine Magana.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Magana, certified financial planner with WWM Financial, and I'll pass it to Kristen.
Good morning, Kristen Huyck, Director of Government Affairs, Marketing Communications at MiraCosta College. And I'll pass it to Amber.
Good morning, Amber. With Scripps Health.
Oops.
She's a little slow-mo this morning. Amber, your audio is distorted. Your audio was very distorted. It sounded very slow, but I think you're okay now if you want to go again.
My internet is slow. That's why my video is not on this morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Amber Trevert from Scripps Health. Nice to see all of you. I'll pass it to Terry.
Terry Kaltenbach, Kiba Associates, and I will pass it to Philip.
Phil Urbina, Opus Productivity Solutions, and I'll pass it to John Osborne.
Hi, John Osborne, AT&T.
I'll go Brett Schanzenbach, Carlsbad Chamber, and I will pass it to Ben Haddad.
Good morning, Ben Haddad, California Strategies, and I will pass it to Josh Mazer.
Morning, Josh Mazer, Upstream Consulting. On to Anthony Sina. Anthony Sina, Notary Republic. He's talking, but we can't hear.
Yeah, are you on mute?
Not on mute.
Okay, I think your audio is not working because I don't see that you're on mute, but we can't hear you. I think your microphone may not be working properly. Okay, Anthony Sina, there you are. Go ahead. No, okay, sorry, I was mistaken. Anthony Sina, Notary Republic. Maybe we could get the audio working later. Let's pass it along to Wade Ashbrenner.
Hi, Wade Ashbrenner, Audeo Charter School, and I'll throw it over to Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Carmichael, and I'm with the Carlsbad Christmas Bureau. I'll pass it to Jason Haber.
Morning, everybody. Jason Haber, City of Carlsbad, Intergovernmental Affairs Director, and I'll toss it over to Jack Cumming.
Good morning also. I'm Jack Cumming. I'm a consulting actuary, and I'll pass it to the flashy Terry Woods.
Terry Woods, North County Daily Star, and I don't know who to pass it to.
No worries. We'll pass it along for you. How about Kurt? Sorry.
Kurt Stembridge, Director of State Government Affairs for Greenwich Biosciences, and I'm lost track also. So.
Okay, no problem. How about Adam Jacobs?
Good morning, Adam Jacobs, Fortis Fitness and Yoga Lux. We're a luxury yoga and fitness facility right down the street in Bresci Ranch and virtually on your cell phone. And I will pass it to Matt Leonard.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Leonard, Financial Advisor with Edward Jones Investments. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Alex.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Kiwan. I'm with Assemblymember Tasha Bruno-Horvath's office, and I will pass it to Haley.
Morning, Haley Wansley with Intessa Communications Group and your secretary for this meeting. I will pass it to Crystal.
Good morning, everyone. Crystal Jabara with Supervisor Desmond's office. And I apologize, I came in late, so I'm going to pass it to Deb if she hasn't already gone.
Sure, thanks, Crystal. Deb Beto, your ops manager. Nice to see everybody this morning, and I will pass it on to Kyle.
Good morning, Kyle Krell, Frolander with Congressman Mike Levin's office. I think I saw J.R. Phillips over there without a video on. J.R.?
I'm on. Thank you, guys. J.R. Phillips with Phillips & Company Real Estate, and I'll pass it on to Kimberlyn Velasquez.
Good morning, everyone. Coming at you from my garage. This is Kimberlyn Velasquez. I'm filling in for Risa Barron for the San Diego County Water Authority.
Thank you. Let me see who hasn't gone. How about Terry Woods?
No, he went. Terry went already.
Okay. Sorry. Kyle?
No, Kyle went. I think we got it. Did we miss anybody? Raise your hand if we missed.
Anybody?
Jim Harper.
Here we go.
Jim Harper, Vice President Krieger, and did Shirley Anderson go?
Oh, no, not yet.
I'll pass it to Shirley.
Shirley Anderson from the Democratic Club of Carlsbad Oceanside, DEMCO. And am I the last one?
No, I actually see Matthew Fye hasn't gone.
Yes, Matthew Fye, Office of Senator Pat Bates.
Great, thank you. And Jim Scanlon?
I just popped in, sorry, to introduce somebody, Terry Woods.
No, just introduce yourself, Jim.
Jim Scanlon, I'm the broker at Scanlon Realty Management. No, I'm sorry I'm late. Should I introduce somebody now?
I think we got everybody.
I think the entire room is covered. The virtual room should be done. Okay, great. Thank you. Well, our big item of the day today is our November ballot propositions. And we're very excited to have those discussed by a wonderful speaker that we know well, Kristen Huyck. And should we go ahead and introduce Kristen now? All right, Kristen, I don't see you, but I'm sure you'll pop up as soon as you begin speaking on my screen. Thank you so much for being here and for describing the top statewide ballot propositions to us with some good factual information. Take it away.
Thank you for having me be here. So first and foremost, I am by no means an expert in any of these items. As I tell my students in political science, if you study political science, you're kind of a jack of all trades and an expert in none. So after the introductions, I can truly say, in the great words of two political philosophers, Wayne and coffee has not kicked in. Basically, Wayne's World, Wayne and Garth Alger, I am not worthy. So with that, I hope there is some discussion around these topics, around these propositions. What I'm presenting is purely on research. It is not the opinion of MiraCosta. It is not the opinion of Kristen Huyck. It's really the experts in the room to have the opportunity to discuss the basics of the 12 November propositions. Okay, so the first one, Proposition 14, this is a bond initiative, and it's a $5.5 billion bond for state stem cell research. And so this is a ability to renew Proposition 71 that was started in 2004. It dedicates $1.5 billion for research and therapy for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, epilepsy, and other brain and central nervous system diseases. And it appropriates general fund money to pay back the bond debt. The fiscal is its increased state costs to repay the bond debt back. And I do just want to preface too, especially when we're looking at the pros and cons. I only put some of the supporters. I did not put all, being that this is a Chamber of Commerce. I definitely focused on the business supporters or the folks that were against. Also our local electeds, if they have come on as a supporter. For the local elected representatives, if I did not include your boss, it was not intentional. I used this great resource called Google, and so it's what came up. So by no means was any elected official alienated. I just tried to pull from the San Diego or Southern California area. So Proposition 14, the yes on it, looks at, it supports the bond for $5.5 billion. The no does not support it. So I'm not sure, Teresa, if we wanted to discuss, I know that Brett, when you put in the description that the chamber would be taking a stand on these. So I'm not sure if this is where the group wants to discuss or we just go through all of them.
Brett, I'm not sure what you want to do, but I think it would be helpful to go through all of them and then do Q&A.
I concur. I concur with that. Let's go ahead and have Kristen go through all of them. People, please take notes as you go so that we can come back and discuss. We'll take them in turn after she's gone through all of them.
Okay. There's only 12. It sometimes feels like 30 though, as you're researching and hearing the depth and breadth of these propositions. I mean, they're all over from healthcare to privacy to taxes to bonds. So there's a great deal of topics that are being discussed for the November ballot. Proposition 15, this is a tax. So this is the split roll tax. There's a lot of discussion around it. And also on some of these images, I put the probably more recognizable logos. I'm not saying that schools and communities first is the side the chamber should go. Again, it's the group that's been very outspoken, either for or against, and you'll see them as we go through this. So Prop 15 is that split tax roll. And so this would make an amendment to Prop 13 that was passed in the 70s, and it would increase funding for K through 12 schools, community colleges, and local governments by requiring that commercial industrial real estate be taxed based on the current market value instead of the purchase price. So again, it's deviating, it's making that revision to Prop 13. On the yes side, we have, if you support it, it's a constitutional amendment that will require commercial industrial properties, except those zoned as commercial agriculture, to be taxed based on their market value. We see some of the supporters that are listed here. No is upholding what currently is held, and that it's the same property tax regardless on if it's residential or commercial. Okay, Prop 16. This looks at a repealing of Proposition 209, the affirmative action amendment that was passed in 1996. Prop 16 is a constitutional amendment that would repeal 209 and change the Constitution. Proposition 209 stated that discrimination and preferential treatment were prohibited in public employment, public education, and public contracting on the account of an individual's or group's race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin. So Proposition 209 banned the use of affirmative action. Proposition 16, if passed, would uphold it. And then a no is to, again, keep it as status, okay? And listed some of the proponents. For this one, there was many in support of yes. I again, did not list all of them. I tried to do the ones that were either recognizable or that the chamber would refer to. Okay. Prop 17, this is a voter component or a suffrage vote component where it looks at persons on parole. And it's a referendum to change the constitution for the state that currently California Constitution disqualifies people with felonies from voting until their imprisonment and parole are complete. This ballot measure would amend the state constitution to allow people with felonies who are on parole to vote. And the ballot measure would keep imprisonment and disqualification for voting, but remove parole status. As of 2020, 19 states allowed people convicted of felonies, but who were on parole to vote. 17 of those states did not allow people to vote while imprisoned. And then 2 states, Maine and Vermont, allow people who are in prison to vote. So just a little bit of a national view of what other states are doing around parolees' ability to vote. So a yes on Proposition 17 would support a change and to allow people on parole or felony convictions to vote. A no would uphold the status. Okay. For this one, there was no funds raised as of the moment I was doing the research. So that was very interesting, that the fact there was definitely sides of those in support or against it, but no money has come in for either side according to FPPC. And again, that can change at any point. Okay, Proposition 18, another suffrage. So looking at voting, this will allow, if passed, individuals who are 17 years old by the time that the general happens to vote. So if they're 17 during the primary, but they're going to be 18 by the time the general election comes, this would allow them to vote. There is a fiscal impact associated with this, increased cost for counties, likely between several hundreds to $1,000s to possibly $1 million a year to send and process voting material. So the fiscal impact here is just that additional ballots that the county register of voters. So while the numbers seemed high, the impact is really for more ballots. And there's an increased one-time cost to the state and hundreds of thousands of dollars to update existing voter registration systems, which if my state representatives want to chime in, I think there's a lot of question around voter registration systems and the costs, and that's typically ongoing. Okay. For a yes, this would change. So the yes supports the constitutional amendment to allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the next general election to vote in the primary. A no upholds the current constitution. Okay. Proposition 19. So my realtors in here probably know far more about this than I ever will be able to. So just the general overview of this is this would change the rules for tax assessment and transfers. So in California, eligible homeowners can transfer their tax assessments to a different home of the same or lesser market value, which allows them to move without paying higher taxes. Homeowners would then be eligible for tax assessment transfers who are 55 years of age or older, persons with severe disabilities, or victim of natural disasters and hazardous waste contamination. So this ballot measure would allow eligible homeowners to transfer their tax assessment anywhere within the state. So this, for families looking to downsize, this might encourage them to do so, which then would potentially open up a larger home for another family to come in because they're able to transfer their current tax assessment to that new home. The fiscal impact here is local governments could gain tens of millions of dollars of property tax revenue per year. These gains would grow over time each year. Schools could gain money, tens of millions of dollars of property tax revenue per year, because then because it could encourage people to move. It could also encourage people to move and stay in California. So it would help with the property tax, and so the impact to local governments as well as education. And revenues from other taxes could increase by tens of millions of dollars for both the state and local revenues. Most of the new state revenue would then be spent on fire protection. So the fire protection component was a caveat that was kind of added in later, I think, to assist in the passage of this. From just kind of original review, I think they did polling and it wasn't polling well, so they had to put something that would be favorable for voters. And by putting additional funding from the revenue of this, from property tax, going to support areas that were wildfire, particularly what we're seeing in Northern California and are anticipating, unfortunately, in Southern California. So Proposition 19, there's a lot of details. I encourage, please read, please go over it, because it does have a lot of components. But the big concept of it is to allow that tax assessment for an individual to move and uphold their current tax. So, or uphold their current rate as opposed to paying higher. So that could encourage folks to move and or stay in California. So real quick, a yes vote supports this change, where a no vote upholds the status. Okay. One thing with propositions and direct democracy is sometimes the yes doesn't mean change and the no doesn't mean status quo. So that's why I keep on saying upholding the status quo or making a change. Sometimes we see them get switched. Okay. So Proposition 20, this looks at law enforcement. This ballot initiative would make specific types of theft and fraud crimes, including firearm theft, vehicle theft, and unlawful use of credit card, chargeable as misdemeanor or felonies, rather than just misdemeanor, so it ups the level. This ballot initiative would also establish 2 additional types of crime in state code, a serial crime and an organized retail crime, and charge them as wobblers, that are crimes chargeable as misdemeanors or felonies. This ballot initiative would require persons convicted of certain misdemeanors that were classified as wobblers or felonies before 2014, such as shoplifting, grand theft, and drug possession, along with several other crimes, including domestic violence and prostitution, with a minor, to submit a collection of DNA sample. So it's increasing the requirement of those that are submitting the DNA samples for the state and federal databases. This limits access to parole programs established for nonviolent offenders who have completed the full term of their primary offense by eliminating eligibility for certain offenses. It changes standards and requirements governing parole decisions under the program, and it authorizes felony charges for specified theft crimes currently chargeable as misdemeanors. So it gets a little bit more detailed as it relates to criminal code. There is a fiscal impact. The increased state and local correctional costs, likely in the tens of millions of dollars annually, primarily related to the increases in county jail populations and levels of community supervision. And I know that we have Supervisor Desmond's office here that could probably even go into greater detail of how this would impact the county level. Oftentimes, and we see this in local government as well, some of the propositions as they're passed at the state level, how they trickle down to the local level is sometimes unintended consequences or intended consequences to keep in mind. Also, increased state and local law review costs, not likely to be more than a few $1 million annually, related to collecting and processing the DNA samples. So for this one, a yes vote supports the initiative to add the crimes to the list of violent felonies for which early parole is restricted. So the yes is the change, and the no, a no is the opposition to this initiative to add these additional crimes. Okay. Proposition 21 Another one that is definitely being discussed as it relates to rent control. We've seen in 2018, 59% of the voters in California did not vote for Proposition 10 as it relates to rent control. And now we have Proposition 21 coming back. That's not it changes it, definitely changes it, but it amends state law to allow local governments to establish rent control on residential properties over 15 years old. It allows local limits on annual rent increases. This takes it more at the local level for that decision. It allows rent increases to in rent control properties of up to 15% over 3 years as a start of a new tenancy. So a new tenant comes in, over a span of 3 years, rent could go up to 15%. It exempts individuals who own no more than 2 homes from new rent control policies. And in accordance with California law, it prohibits rent control from violating landlord's right of fair financial return. So for this one, the yes supports the ballot initiative to allow local governments to enact rent control on housing that was occupied over 10 or 15 years ago, with an exception of landlords who own no more than 2. So the yes is, again, does that change? The no is the status quo and continues to prohibit rent control on housing that was first occupied prior to February 1, 1995, and housing units with distinct titles such as single family homes. So I would say this is probably the Proposition 22, one that we've all heard about, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. If you use any of the rideshare apps, both Lyft and Uber have said they will be pushing out notifications on the apps in regards to Proposition 22. So this would consider app-based drivers to be independent contractors and not employees or agents. This is a response to the Assembly Bill 5, which was passed in September, or signed into law September 2019. And so AB 5, as I know this has been discussed with this group before, it looks at kind of the gig economy, particularly rideshare drivers, as not being independent contractors and as being employees, therefore receiving benefits. So Proposition 22 would undo it and classifies drivers to be as independent contractors, not employees, unless the company set the driver's hours, require acceptance of specific rides and delivery requests, or restricts working for other companies. So this further goes into defining what an independent contractor is versus what an employee is. Independent contractors are not covered by various state employment laws, including minimum wage, overtime, unemployment. And so again, yes on 22 would uphold, prior to AB 5, the concept that drivers are independent contractors and not employees. So a yes supports this ballot initiative to define app-based transportation and delivery drivers as independent contractors, and then a no upholds the status, which is Assembly Bill 5 that was passed in 2019. Okay, Proposition 23 relates to healthcare, and this requires at least 1 licensed physician on site during treatment at outpatient kidney dialysis clinics. Amber, I'm sure you have the background of this seems a very specific bill. So I was trying to research what the trigger was that made this turn into a statewide proposition. I'm sure there's been a series of events that led to this, but it just seemed very specific on the onset. So still doing research on this one, but it requires clinics to report dialysis-related infection data to state and federal governments. It prohibits clinics from closing or reducing services without state approval. It prohibits clinics from refusing to treat patients based on the source of payment of care. The fiscal impact is it will increase state and local government costs, likely in the low tens of $1 million annually, and then also the impact to the vendor themselves. A yes vote will require that chronic dialysis clinics to have on-site physicians, so upholding the change, promotion of the change, where the no is upholding the status quo. So this one, again, seemed very specific and trying to research kind of what was the catalyst behind it. Okay. And so Proposition 24, this permits consumers to prevent businesses from sharing personal information. It also has correct or inaccurate personal information and limit businesses' use of sensitive personal information, including geolocation, race, ethnicity, religion, genetic, private communication, sexual orientation, and specified health information. It establishes the California Privacy Protection Agency to additionally enforce and implement consumer privacy laws and impose fines. It changes the criteria for that businesses must comply as it relates to this law. And it prohibits businesses' retention of personal information for longer than reasonably necessary. I'm still researching what reasonably necessary is. That seems like a very political word used, and that was directly in the language of reasonably necessary. It's very ambiguous. It triples maximum penalties for violations concerning consumers under the age of 16, and authorize civil penalties for theft of consumer login information. Fiscal is it increases state costs at least $10 million annually for a new state agency to oversee and enforce. So this is would be the cost as it relates to the bureaucracy to implement and enforce. So the yes supports the change and the restriction of consumer data privacy laws, or the tightening of consumer data privacy laws, including provisions to allow consumers to direct businesses not to share their personal information. A no on this upholds the status quo. Okay, and the last one, Proposition 25, talks about trials. This is another one that both sides are very active in the digital world. I haven't seen anything as far as in community-wise, but definitely digitally, both sides. So with Proposition 25, a yes vote approves and a no vote rejects a 2018 law that replaced the money bail system for obtaining release for jail before trial with a system based on determination of public safety and flight risk. It limits detention of a person in jail before the trial for most misdemeanors. The fiscal impact for Proposition 25 is increased state and local costs, possibly in the mid hundreds of millions of dollars annually, for a new process for releasing people from jail prior to trial. It's unclear whether some of the increased state costs would be offset by local funds currently spent on this type of workload. Also decreased county jail costs, possibly, so we could see a cost saving at the county level if passed. And so a yes vote is upholds the contested legislation of SB 10, which would replace cash bail and risk assessment, and a no would repeal SB 10. So, as a reminder, regardless on what your personal opinion is, regardless on your whether any associations you're involved in, it's critical to vote. So register to vote. Make sure that's to get in your, if you've moved, that the registration is in by October 19th. If you do it at the Register of Voters, you have till October 20th, but October 19th, keep that date in mind to be ready to vote for the November 3rd. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, but I believe Register of Voters in San Diego will be automatically sending a mail ballot to all voters. And with that, thank you for allowing me to be here and share research, not opinion.
Thank you so much, Kristen. This is such an excellent overview, and we really appreciate your putting in the time and the effort to give us this presentation. I did see in the chat, people were asking if you would be willing to make these slides available to the chamber, because we love them so much and they're very helpful. Great, thank you, Kristen, for doing that. It's a good time now for Q&A. I didn't see any questions directly in the chat, so it looks like people want to ask you. It's hard to see which of you have your hands raised, but if you'd like, raise your hand and we can unmute you. Brett, do you want to kick it off?
Well, how about we, Teresa, why don't we kind of go through them one at a time and just see if there's discussion, if there's, interest in taking positions, or of course would be recommendations to the board. And then as we go through them, if people have questions for Kristen, based on individually, prop this, prop that, then we can kind of tackle them that way.
Sounds great. Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with Prop 14.
I have a question on Prop 14, Josh. Just curious if there's any feedback as to why we would prefer to have the state do that versus private entity. Seems like that type of medical research seems to be having more momentum in the private side versus public. Just curious on that, if anybody has any information.
Kristen, I don't know if you have any info. I think though, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Josh. Obviously there was a time when the voters did approve doing the state funding this, and so this would kind of extend that since it looks like it's run out. But I don't disagree with your assessment. Kristen, I don't know if you had something to share on that.
I don't, and I think that the response would be opinionated. So
Sure, yeah. And it might be one, I really appreciate what Kristen just did on all of these as a voter, but as a chamber, I'm not sure that one has a business impact. I'm open if people think it does and if we should take a position, but if it doesn't, we don't have to take a particular position on each one. I like that. Thank you for putting that slide up, Kristen. So you see who's in favor of it. So Kristen, when it says UC Regents, that's University of California Regents, so the heads of all the UC colleges?
Correct. There wasn't many on either side, so that's why the supporters are very sparse.
I would just be curious to know what the results have been of the previous bond that was issued in 2004. What kind of results about stem cell research came from that bond being issued?
Good point. I mean, if there's anybody who feels strongly that we should take a position on it as a business organization, I mean, I think now's a good time to speak up, but otherwise we should probably gloss this one. And I mean, individually, we all need to vote on it, but as an organization, I'm not sure we have a stake in it either way.
Agreed.
And then we already took a position on Prop 15 last month. So although I do appreciate Kristen's overview of it, but Kristen, if you could move to your slide on Prop 16 and see if there's a discussion to come up on this one. Oh, looks like John Osborne's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on Prop 14 on, whenever there's a bond measure, that there's a interest impact to the state. And so it's kind of using the state credit card to fund things. I'm not speaking for or against stem cell research, but in general, just for people to be aware that, when the state issues bonds, then the state's on the hook to pay for the interest on those bonds. So anytime there's a bond measure, there's an increase in cost to the state. So that's all.
Good point. All right, 16. Teresa, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to step on your toes, but I'm just helping move the discussion.
No, it's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, with 16. So again, very open to hear what people think on this. Obviously, these are different times than in 1996. I remember at the time feeling like there was some flaws in affirmative action back in the 90s, which is why I feel like voters supported repealing it. So I don't really know. I don't know if this is one that it would be wise for the chamber to get involved in making a stand or not with the climate out there. But anybody have any thoughts? And I think I saw Phil's hand was raised. Phil Urbina.
I would just have some concerns that this bill might open up businesses to more lawsuits if the results they didn't have enough of each type of a group, that could harm business in that respect.
I think
it's for public institutions, not for businesses.
Yeah, okay, good point. Deb, what did you just say? Say that
Public
again.
institutions.
I was just clarifying that I think this applies more to government than businesses.
It does. I will also say, and I haven't had a chance to check this out, but a good friend of mine, very knowledgeable person, said that this year UC admissions, Hispanics were the largest group admitted.
You're saying that, so like without even having affirmative action, you're saying that minorities are making inroads. Again, whether
but if it doesn't have any business, if it doesn't have any business, I'm fine moving past this.
Anybody have a strong thought or sense that from a business standpoint, whether we should wade into this one? Again, I'm a little hesitant with the climate out there for the chamber to officially take a stand on this one, because I feel like you probably couldn't win if whether you supported it or opposed it. I'm not sure you would be viewed. It would be viewed well. I kind of think it's too much of a lightning bolt. I'm kind of more like, let's stand back and let the voters just decide whether this is a good idea or not. I don't know. Anybody else have a thought?
I would agree. I think this is kind of more of our individual kind of philosophy, and I'm not sure if we want to take a stand on this, our recommendation to the board.
I think it's fine to take no position.
Yeah, okay. All right, again, not stepping on toes, but moving on to 17, parolees voting, and 18, 17-year-olds voting in the primaries. Again, not sure these have business, ramifications, but if anybody has a question for Kristen or on either of these, or thinks there's some business application, then this is your time to voice your questions or share. Yeah, Kristen just put in the chat that the Cal Chamber only took a stance on 5 of these propositions, and we're not. I appreciate that perspective, because that's always good to know, but that doesn't mean, we need to follow suit, and doesn't mean we need to agree with Cal Chamber. We do agree with them a lot of times, but we're of course our own org. So I don't want people to feel bound by that, but I think it's a valid point that not every single one's gonna have business, applicability. So any thoughts and again, if you have just questions as a voter, this is a time to just get your own questions answered as you assess these. And Kristen's done a lot of research. So if anybody has any questions on 17 or 18 or thoughts of whether we should take a position, this would be your time to raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Brett, I want to just weigh in on just the cost of running the election. From a business standpoint, there's certainly financial implications when you start changing the cost of doing business for voting. So I would say that there is a financial implication to this. So from a business standpoint, you could consider that. Just a comment.
Valid point. Any other thoughts on that?
Got a question on Prop 18. The voter registration costs seem to be, wouldn't that cost still be incurred regardless? It's just the timing of when that cost is incurred. You're still registering new people to vote.
Kristen, any thoughts on that, or from what you've seen?
I believe Josh is correct that currently if somebody who's 17 and they're able to vote for the general election, they'll register and go, this just puts the costs earlier, which could potentially allow them to vote in one additional election of the primary. So it could be one extra ballot. I don't have the percentages on how much it would increase. And I don't have the numbers of how many 18-year-olds register currently. Anecdotally, I can't imagine there's a huge flood, but that's just anecdotal perception.
Sure.
Didn't you say that there was $1 million charge or something? Did I hear that right, Kristen, to add them on?
It said it could increase the cost for counties from hundreds of thousands to potentially $1 million. So that would just be for the additional ballots, which are oftentimes offset by candidate statements as well.
Okay, thank you.
I would recommend that we have a default stance of taking no position, and unless somebody wants to, volunteer that we should take a position on these, and then we can move a little faster.
I agree. I think this is a matter of personal preference, and I don't think we want to open this cost issue first. The analysis seems a little like it might be a little fuzzy. $1 million seems like an awful lot of money for a county for something as simple as this, and we certainly don't want to get into the idea of rolling back women's suffrage to save money.
Yeah. All right, I agree. Let's go ahead and just jump to 19. Kristen, if you could put your, thank you. Adding and subtracting property tax breaks, at least is the way my thing reads. All right, so this one's a little more complicated. Hey, JR, if you have any, view on this as a realtor, if this, you think you agree with kind of the, and again, this could be just your own opinion, but if you have anything you want to add in, feel free.
Well, I think our National Association of Realtors and all of our local boards have all agreed that this is a good thing. Again, I'm always hesitant to make changes. When I'm on the front lines, what I'm seeing, guys, is that I believe we're talking about something that is so antiquated and out of touch anymore with the way that the prices and the flow of people's movements in their lives when they retire to come coastal. This really helps people when they move from the coast inland, but for anyone to come inland or downsize, the cost to downsize now is so expensive that this is really only helping people that are living in very, very, very expensive homes. It's just not being that effective unless you want to move east. So I think there's some benefit for some people here, but I just don't think it's that big of a deal because I see it for example, in our brokerage over the last 12 months, we've had 4 clients that have moved east to west coastal and weren't able to take advantage of this because the condo they bought on the beach was worth more than the 5,000 square foot home they sold in the east. So I think the whole law needs to be probably thrown out and looked at from more of a practical standpoint. So I don't know if that helps you or hurts you.
So Kristen, I'm just looking at the things here. So I do see there's a piece in here that requires that inherited homes that are not used as principal residences, such as second homes or rentals, be reassessed at market value. So that could have a big impact on that's probably not a huge population of those homes in terms of raw numbers, but those probably are pretty valuable high-end homes that are being transferred within families that would have to be reassessed at market value. Was there anything you saw in the research around that particular point?
I didn't. And again, JR is going to have far better understanding.
I could add a little bit there.
Okay.
Kristen. So my understanding as a real estate and estate planning attorney, currently under current law, you can transfer parent, child, and grandparent to grandchild your primary residence without a reassessment. And this will change it so that you only get that exclusion up to $1 million of value.
And JR, you're saying all the associations that you're aware of are supporting this?
They are, but I'm not so sure they're as informed or understand it as well as possibly they should. I don't want to come off as not concerned about it. I think the whole situation needs to be reassessed and there needs to be a better understanding of how this is happening. I think this was intended to help people manage their finances in retirement, and I don't think it's helping people manage their finances in retirement. I think it's benefiting the people that are in the know and the people that are wealthy. I do like the aspect that it would only be one primary residence if it was a primary residence. If not, then your tax base goes up. I actually like that. So, but that's my opinion, which I don't think I should give.
No, that's okay. We're looking for, different opinions and input at this point. Did anybody have a thought whether this is one we should weigh in on either way, or keep our no position like John Osborne said?
I have benefited from the current tax rules when my parents passed and I was able to inherit a house, but I'm not really sure that this is a significant chamber issue. I would recommend we take no position.
Any other thoughts?
I would tend to agree.
All right, not hearing anybody else. Teresa, I'm going to keep moving us forward. Prop 20.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, tougher on parole. So I'm going to wade in on this one because from a business standpoint, this is I know it's on right here, it talks about DNA collection, but the other aspects of what Prop 20 does is very important to my members in the chamber. So this has a direct, how am I phrasing this? This is to try and fix some of the unintended consequence of Prop 47 and Prop 57. When Prop 47 and 57 passed, we inadvertently enabled criminals to become serial shoplifters as long as they stayed with under a certain dollar value amount. There was almost nothing that could be done to really, nothing with any teeth that could be done to give them accountability. So I think the level's like $950 or something like that. And so you will see people literally, robbing places like Walmart and Target and our other stores just blind with no consequence. And they know they can't, there's nothing that can be done to them. So this is intended to fix that. And all of us as consumers pay for that problem that was accidentally created by 47 and 57. And because, the loss that our retailers absorb by that petty theft is staggering, and they have to pass it on to us in some way. Personally, I think to support our businesses so that they can protect themselves better and actually have a reasonable approach to accountability for those kind of crimes, I would be in favor of us taking a position to support this. But that's my thoughts, and I throw them out there and welcome others.
I would like to weigh in. This is JR. I just dropped my daughter off up in Berkeley at college last weekend, and up in that area, they have these laws in effect, even I think double what we have in terms up to like $2,000. And I would just comment that the environment that we were in last weekend was one that when we got there on Saturday, they had been moving in for 2 days, and several parents had the windows of their cars shattered, hammered out, and all the belongings taken out while they were waiting curbside at the dorm. They had gone in to register, gone upstairs with their keys, come back to find their stuff completely cleaned out of their SUVs, only to be told, we're sorry, but the police will not come for that. You shouldn't have left your car unattended. For me, that was a new world. And all I would comment on is it was very strange. My wife or I stayed with the car for an hour as we shuttled stuff up. We never left our car alone. We didn't feel particularly unsafe, but it was our reality that we had to guard our car. So that's my input there. It was a very strange environment to exist in. It's not how we live down here.
I think this is Jack Cumming. I think that that Brett's analysis was very deliberative, very well thought out, and I move that the Government Affairs Committee recommend to the board a yes vote on this proposition.
This is Terry, I second that.
I'd be curious on the unintended consequence of a yes vote in which we're adding more load to our prison system, more cost to collecting DNA. I'm just curious on that.
Kristen, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. As far as prison, I don't know anything about what it would do, how much cost it could do for DNA. But as far as prison, you know, we're talking about trying to pull back from some unintended consequences of stuff that was enacted just in 2016 and 2014. So yes, we might have more people going to prison, but we're not going to have more than we're going to prison, you know, just a few years back. We're going to have more than we're going to prison in 2018 and 17 and 19, but not more than we're going in 2016 and 2014. So it will look like an increase compared to 2019, but I personally don't think it's going to be an increase when you look at a bigger picture. But I don't know anything about the expense on the DNA side. And if, Kristen, if you think my analysis is off, or if anybody thinks it's off, please share. I'm just sharing from what I've researched.
I think that the cost of imprisonment is going to be lower than the cost of the thefts.
Brett, this is Crystal Jabara from Supervisor Desmond's office. There'll be a cost to keep convicted felons in prison, and that's a state cost that all of us will absorb. There is some also local county costs. But on the flip side, when we have these mass releases that we're seeing across California, it's a strain on our probation department, also our DA's office. So they're adding expenses to, we're taking people that typically should be supervised by parole and supervising them under county probation. So there's an increased local cost for that. So there's costs both ways when they do the mass releases, or if we leave people in prison for their full term. And then also, I don't know if the DA's office or if the sheriff's office has taken a position on this yet. I can guess what their position would be, but I don't want to speak for them. But also you have to remember the state of California has a very liberal definition of nonviolent offenders, so who they are releasing into the populations. John Gardner, who murdered Chelsea King and Amber Dubois, was a nonviolent offender.
Oh.
So that's my personal thought.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa, I'll turn it back to you if you want to.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second on the floor, and so we've been having discussion. Haley, hopefully you took note of the motion and second. I think it was Jack and JR. But we're having discussion. Any more discussion before we call for the vote? I mean, I would say that I think there are some other factors that are not on these slides. I've been trying to do some research on my phone, looking at it. I believe in, you know, law and order, and I believe very, very strongly that we need to prevent the situations that JR was talking about. We need to have safe communities. At the same time, I do think that there are some significant costs that we're not talking about the numbers exactly, to Jack's point about having a very large prison population. And I think that's why the original ballot measures were passed by the California public in 2016. It was related to an overcrowded prison system and the charges on to the public, taxpayer funds being used for that. It was one of the top expenditures. So I would not take a position at this point until I have more information. But any other discussion?
I would add that when some of these prisoners were released from state prison, there was a very high recidivism rate. So they went back into county jails, and that had an uptick in cost for the county. So while you may have saved some dollars at the state level, they were really just transferred back to the county on those that committed additional crimes and were arrested for those.
Yes, I've heard that too. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question and then I have another clarifying question. So Jack made the motion and Terry seconded, but then I heard JR seconded. Can I just get that corrected through the minutes?
Terry did second. I saw Terry as well, so I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, and then I just had a quick question on the supporters. Kristen, I know you mentioned you only listed a couple, just grabbing them, but it seems as though if this were a significant problem, as though correcting, Prop 47 and the like, how come there's not more sheriff's associations or public safety associations in support, or are there?
There are. I didn't want to do it a second slide, but yes, I tried to just pull from Southern California region. So yes, there are more.
Okay, so just for taking a vote, I think, Kristen, if you could do us a favor, just stop sharing your screen for the moment and we'll go into gallery view so that Teresa can see the vote for tabulation purposes, and then we'll go back to your screen, to your slides.
Yes, and there's another way that we can do this, Brett, that John Osborne brought up, which was using the yes and the participants tab. That way we can easily count who's a yes.
Okay.
And that way it's very clear and I don't have to look at your screen and wait for you to see whose hand is up. So if I'll just go into the participants. There's 30 participants. Phil, did you want to make a comment before we call for the vote? I see your blue hand is up in the participants. You want to lower your hand? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so now it's time to call for the vote. So if you wouldn't mind, a yes vote means that you support this proposition. And this is Prop 20 that we're talking about. And if you want to vote no or abstain, just don't vote right now. So yes is the vote that we're asking for. We're calling for the vote. A yes vote to make the recommendation to the Board of Directors of the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce to support. Yes. Yeah, just click the green little button. All right, we can count them up. There's a lot of people who haven't been voting, so I know there's some people that cannot vote or that may be voting no. So this is your last call for a vote. If you want to vote yes on this, then please click on the green yes check mark. Okay, Haley, do you want to count also? I see 12. Yes, okay, so there's 12 yeses. And then if you would like to vote no against the chamber taking a yes position, then you can click on no. So everyone who's got the green arrow, can you take it off? The little green mark. And then we're just gonna do the no's. So this is, this is against that motion. Essentially, it's not a new motion, it's against that motion. Right, so we know how many people are voting. Is that right? Okay.
2 against everybody else. Is that what you see?
Yeah, 2 against, the chamber taking that position, and then everyone else will just count as abstaining, or government officials and government agency representatives abstaining. Okay, great, thank you for the vote. That vote has ended and we can move on to the next proposition. Prop 21.
I'll ask Kristen to share her screen again, just to put the slides up there for help with discussion. Thank you. So as Kristen pointed out, there was a ballot measure just recently that was rejected by the voters on rent control. You know, again, as a chamber, we tend to be free market, you know, in general, more leaning towards free market. And so I know the chamber took a position against, what was it, Kristen? Was it Prop 10, I think it was?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so we had a position against Prop 10 in the whenever that came up recently in election, but I don't know what the substantial differences are between this and Prop 10. Is there anything that you unearthed, Kristen, that was substantially different between the two?
From my understanding, it gives more local control as opposed to statewide. So it lets the local jurisdictions decide.
Any thoughts there? I mean, again, my first thought is just when there's rent control, it usually is a disincentive for folks to be renting their home out. But I don't know, others in the real estate community that are on the call or others in general who want to weigh in?
This is JR again. I spoke to this a couple years ago, 18 months ago when this was on the ballot. History just shows throughout the country that rent control simply doesn't work. The owners of the properties just discontinue improving the properties. If any of you have had friends in San Francisco or New York in rent control buildings, they've usually gamed the system, and the people living in the buildings don't need the rent control. So it's just, I would say that it's just not going to have the intended consequences that they would want, and history has already shown us those results. So I don't think it's something we want to do, and it'll end up with less rentals, and the rentals that are available under rent control will be in horrible condition.
Yeah, I want to say in general, I'm opposed to the rent control, and then adding the local component to it. At least at the statewide, there's a little bit more robust discussion, but now you turn it over to a 5-person body by jurisdiction. They can enact whatever kind of rent controls that they are allowed to under this. And I'm also opposed to the exemption being only 2 units. So if you buy a 2-unit property and you own a home yourself, now you're no longer exempt from this. So I'm opposed.
I would move that we take a position opposing Proposition 21.
I'll second that. Catherine?
That's Phil and Catherine as a second. Any discussion, questions before we call for the vote? I can't see you, so you'll just have to, I'm looking. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any, so we'll call for the vote. All in favor of recommending I'm sorry.
No vote.
Is it no? A no vote to the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, please say aye. Or I'm sorry, please click the green check mark on your participant little icon.
So yes is no, right?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, that's confusing.
Okay.
All right, we're counting it up. I see 14. Kristen, you have a strange icon next to you. Are you voting?
No.
Okay. It looks like a green arrow thing, but it's
Sharing your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a screen share icon.
Okay. All right. Do you have 14 also, Haley? Or is it 13 without Kristen?
I have 13.
Okay.
13 and 1.
Okay, so it's 13. And then all opposed to recommending that the chamber take a no position, please click on the red X icon on your participant tab. I see 1. And then we'll count the rest as abstentions. Okay, so thank you very much for your vote. That passes. So we will be recommending a no position to the chamber for Prop 21. Prop 22.
So again, I'm going to jump in from the chamber perspective on Prop 22. This was a direct, carve out initiative by the gig economy workers in the rideshare space against Assembly Bill 5. The chamber was against Assembly Bill 5 the whole time because of, how it changed independent contractors and that whole thing. So getting a carve out for a specific industry just gives them the flexibility from my perspective as a chamber to do, to organize their workers as they want, as independent contractors, or if they wanted to make them employees and do that, that's of course would be up to them. But so as a chamber, I would tend to lean in favor of supporting Prop 22, but that's just a quick on my thoughts. Open to others.
I think it's instructive that Mothers Against Drunk Driving is very supportive of this.
Interesting. Kristen, could you advance your slide to the yes and no part? Thank you.
Is there any information available on what the employee body of these app-based companies, how they see this? I know the company wants to keep them as independent contractors. I'm curious what if there's any information as to what the current independent contractors think of it.
From what I found, it was just the companies coming out, as you mentioned, John, but I did not see any research about polling of employees.
So this is J.R. Phillips. I took my own independent poll Saturday night with 4 Lyft drivers, and they're all for Proposition 22, and they're counting on it passing. That was just my 4 drivers Saturday night. I can tell you that it was incredibly difficult to get rides. Uber was basically shut down, and I can't imagine a life without Uber and Lyft. But my 4 drivers were all for this, and actually believing that it was going to pass easily.
Yeah, anecdotally, I've heard that the drivers are supportive of it, but I don't have any real proof of it. I've just heard people say that they are. So,
But is that because they think that if it doesn't pass, Uber and Lyft are going to leave, so they'll take what they can
I
get?
think so. Yeah, these are two. Interesting enough that these 2 companies are California based on top of it all. So
Well,
yeah,
and my 4 drivers guys all said that if it didn't pass, they would be leaving the state. They were all young. It's just my anecdotal poll I did it Saturday night, but it was 4 young drivers, and they all said if this doesn't pass, they'll more than likely have to leave the state. What does that mean? I don't know, but they're counting on this. They think it's going to pass easily. I don't know if that's naive or what, but they think it's going to pass easily.
Uber
if
and
the young
Lyft
people
have
get out and vote,
threatened-
they probably will.
Uber and Lyft have threatened to leave the state, and we wouldn't have Uber or Lyft if it hadn't have been. If this doesn't pass, there's a chance that they could leave the state. They were already looking at shutting down last week. Maybe it was an idle threat, I don't know, but it was a court decision on Friday, I believe, that stayed them from having to classify their drivers at work as employees. So that's still on hold from a court standpoint. But a lot of these people they're working part-time, and this would change everything for them as part
Yeah, they're counting on that money. Yeah. So.
In the interest of time, is there anybody have an appetite for a motion?
Yes, I think that in general, business benefits from having greater flexibility and fewer state mandated welfare benefits that are a cost to employers. So I favor a yes vote on Proposition 22. And I submit that as a motion for the committee to recommend to the board.
I would second that. This is Terry.
Thank you. First from Jack, and then second from Terry. Any other, I know we're running short on time, but any essential discussion? I would say that the gig economy is something that is very hard for a lot of organizations, including employee unions, to understand. You know that I work with technology companies, and I have represented Uber. I know it's very hard to understand, and we want to make sure people have good jobs that provide a living wage. But the gig economy is something a little bit different. And I'm going to differ with some of my friends and colleagues. And I also think that this is really important that we allow this gig work to be done. And I've spoken with people in Carlsbad as well, who are very concerned because they are drivers and it's a side gig for them. And it's really important that this pass. So I also will vote yes. So let's go ahead and take the vote. Please go ahead and click on the participants tab. Click on the yes if you're in support. Okay, let's count them up.
Yeah, 14.
Great. 14, and then we can take those down. And if you'd like to oppose, please click no. Others will be counted as abstentions. Okay. Haley, is that 0?
Yep.
And everyone else is an abstention. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Voting is closed. Let's move on. Prop 23.
Amber, are you still on the call? Is your Wi-Fi working?
I am. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think Kristen is correct. This is a very, very specific proposition with respect to dialysis clinics. We are not planning to engage or weigh in on it. It's a result of a piece of legislation and some issues at the state level last year. So, I don't intend to weigh in on it. And I'm not sure that the chamber really needs to take a position on it either.
Unless somebody feels strongly, I think we should just move on.
Great, Prop 24.
I'm going to jump in on Prop 24. We had brand new consumer rules that were just brought into law very recently, just took effect, and all of our businesses are trying to adjust to those. Personally, I think it's a bit early to already be making adjustments to those laws that are, I'm not even sure our businesses are up to speed yet on the laws that just took effect. So I'm a little worried for our businesses and our members if they have to adjust again to new laws. So that's my thought. I'm hesitant for this to go into effect from a membership standpoint. I don't feel like the dust is settled on what the last consumer privacy protection rules are. So I'm kind of personally I'm opposed to this, but I'm open to hear other views.
I can weigh in. I know AT&T is opposed to this. I believe that the proposition was funded by one very wealthy person who's passionate about this issue. When there were adjustments made to the state measure, he vowed to take this to the voters and try and put even more consumer protections in there. So AT&T is opposed.
Is that a motion or is that a no recommendation?
I will make a motion that we oppose Prop 24.
Second the motion.
Great. So motion by John Osborne, second by Jack Cumming. And any essential discussion or questions before we call for the vote?
I think it's worth noting for those that aren't familiar with this, it primarily targets larger business in adding, changing, and deleting data. So for most companies that are below $25 million, that was a threshold when I had read into it originally, it's not really going to affect them, which is the majority of our chamber members. Just a side note.
Can you clarify for me what the interplay is between this and the privacy legislation that was passed in California last cycle?
There were certain amendments to the privacy legislation that was passed, and the person funding this did not agree with those, and so he funded signature gathering to basically undo those amendments.
Which amendments?
Well, to the privacy protection bill, I don't know what the specific amendments were, but he felt that it wasn't as strong as it could have been.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. So that was the essential discussion. Let's call for the vote. Please go on the participants tab and click a green check mark if you'd like to vote yes.
Yes is for no then, right?
Yes, you'd be
Yes.
voting yes to recommend the board opposes Prop 24, or you could vote no to not oppose Prop 24.
Okay, we'll count them up.
Come on, 14.
Okay. 14?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. And if you'd like to vote no, please click on the red X button. I don't see any. So we'll count the others as abstentions. Great. Thank you very much. We can move on to the last one, Prop 25.
Again, if anybody feels really strongly that the chamber has a place to weigh in on this, I'm going to ask you to speak up now in the interest of time, but otherwise I think we should default to a no position and just, you know, kind of move on to our legislative update stuff. But if you have a thought, now's your time. I don't hear any thoughts. So we'll leave that one alone then. Thank you so much, Kristen. This was excellent and super helpful. And I'm gonna, Teresa, give it back to you to give us some brief legislative updates from our reps.
Yes. Let's go ahead and start from the top levels. We'll start with our Congressman's office. Kyle, would you like to make a report for Congressman Levin?
Yeah, I would love to. It's good to see y'all. It's been a little while since I've provided an update here. So I'll try to go quick, but I do have a bit to cover. Congressman Levin, as usual, is very focused on his work to support veterans. Just last Wednesday, he held a discussion with some of our local veterans and others who would benefit from the legislation he's introduced. Some of that includes Army veteran Ryan Kuehl's. The president actually signed into law the Ryan Kuehl Specially Adaptive Housing Act. That actually improves and expands the VA's program that provides grants to some of our most severely disabled veterans so that they can help adapt their homes, remodel their homes to accommodate their disabilities. Also, Marine veteran Brian Talley, he was denied the opportunity to file a medical malpractice claim due to a lack of transparency at the VA. And so the House Committee on Veterans Affairs recently passed the Brian Talley VA Employment Transparency Act, which would help to improve that process of medical malpractice. And we also included local Army veteran Jeffrey Jones, whose family was on the verge of homelessness. He came to our office for assistance and we were able to help them secure housing and stay off the street. So just as a reminder, our office is always available to help folks, especially with VA, Social Security, and other things to make sure that we're helping folks. A couple of other things. Congressman Levin a couple weeks ago flew back to Washington to vote on to provide some needed funds for the Postal Service so we can continue our mail and deliveries, including Social Security checks and prescription drugs and more. Looking forward though, some things that you could take part in if you'd like to join us. Today at 2 p.m., Congressman Levin's holding a virtual town hall with Congresswoman Karen Bass to discuss COVID-19, recent social unrest, the economic crisis, and more. You can tune in on his official government Facebook page. I'll paste that link in the chat. It's just facebook.com/RepMikeLevin. And then tomorrow at 10 a.m., Congressman Levin is leading a discussion with some of our local educators, parents, and PTA leaders on school reopening challenges. He's going to be joined by the San Diego Unified School District, Oceanside Unified, Vista Unified, Capistrano Unified, as well as the Teachers Association. And I'll make sure to post that one also, the Zoom link for that. And finally, because I saw one of them on the phone here, he's doing a town hall tomorrow with Greenwich Biosciences. That's going to be more of a private event, but we're looking forward to that as well. So I'll post those two links, and thanks for having me here. It's good to see y'all.
Thank you, Kyle. We're running really short on time, so I'm going to ask that all the reps try to keep their highlights kind of brief. So we'll go to the next level, Senator Bates. That's Matthew Pye. Would you like to give a presentation for Senator Bates?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. As you all know, the legislative session just wrapped up on Monday, very late at night. There's plenty of articles you can all read about that in more detail, as one of our fellow senators down here in San Diego actually tested positive for COVID-19. And so that kind of changed the legislative schedule and how things went and how the end kind of wrapped up. In terms of legislation, the senator, as you all know, senators were asked to definitely pare down their legislation greatly this session just due to COVID-19 and everything associated with that. But we were happy that one of Senator Bates' bills, SB 934, which I had mentioned at this committee before, this is the bill dealing with eliminating the $25 filing fee for nonprofits that we worked with the FTB on. That is headed to the governor's desk. It got unanimous support in the Assembly after passing through the Senate. So it's now on the governor's desk, and we definitely hope to have a signature on that because it's definitely gotten a lot of bipartisan support. So we're hopeful for that. And with that, we've wrapped up the session now and still here processing many EDB cases. They have informed us that they assigned more staff, especially to the legislative offices, to process those. So we'll see what kind of progress happens on that end. It's still pretty slow on our end when we see cases just continually to pile up. So hope to see more movement on that. But other than that, we're still here to assist on any California state agency matter that you may have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on to Assembly Member Tasha Brenner-Horvath's office. Alex, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. I haven't been able to give an update in a couple months, so thank you very much for having me. I will keep it very brief, just like Matthew. The Assembly member wrapped up the session on a late Monday night. One bill of interest that she was able to pass was AB 1731, which is a bill to incentivize business participation in the state's work share program. This legislation aims to keep employees employed without putting additional burdens on small businesses. That had bipartisan support and is currently on its way to the governor's office. If the governor does sign the bill, it will go into effect immediately. It has an urgency clause on it. Additionally, she was a co-author of SB 1447, which provides a tax credit to small businesses who are hiring new employees. And then coming up in our office on September 17th, Thursday, September 17th at 4 p.m., we are hosting a teletown hall with the president of MiraCosta and the president of Cal State to talk to them about their plans for fall, as well as some of the challenges they've overcome in the last 5 months, and then their plans for reopening sometime, hopefully in spring. And thank you very much to Kristen for helping our office coordinate that town hall. We're looking forward to it. And just like Senator Bates' office, we are continuing to help our constituents access their unemployment benefits. We've helped over 800 constituents receive assistance in the last 5 months. And if you have anyone within the 76 Assembly District who needs assistance with that, please contact our office. We are happy to help out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex. We'll move on to the county level. Supervisor Jim Desmond's representative is here with us. Crystal, would you like to give an update?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Well, non-COVID related, the county passed their budget last week, close to a $700 billion budget for our next fiscal year. A lot of maneuvering because of COVID and expenses that we're experiencing. The county did dip into reserves. They'll be preserving cash on hand for more than, I believe it's close to 4 months operating expenses, which I think the county burns through about $16 billion a day. So it's quite a bit of cash on hand. So we're happy to have the budget behind us. Also, our grants application, I know a lot of businesses as well as the chamber is very much aware that we have, each supervisor has $4.1 million, excuse me, I wish we had billions, to give away. We are currently taking applications for the $4.1 million available. We have close to, I think it's 200 million in requests. So we do have a set aside for $1 million specifically to restaurant and food beverage. Also, supervisor will be prioritizing businesses and businesses that support other businesses like the chamber, Boys and Girls Club, who are providing daycare for our workers that are needing to get back to work. So the supervisor is planning on presenting all of his grant requests at the September 15th meeting. It'll be voted on by the Board of Supervisors. And then once it's awarded and approved, will be sent out through the Office of Financial Planning. I have a feeling it's going to take about 30 days to get those checks, and the money has to be spent before the end of the year. So we know there's an urgent need for that money, and we are making it a priority for our next board meeting. New health orders, obviously we have the new tier system for the state of California. San Diego County is the only Southern California county that is in the red, not purple, which is good, but as a lot of people have noticed on the tier system, there is no green. So it's no full reopening plans whatsoever. And anyone who's a number cruncher has noticed, who has looked at the triggers, they're a little complicated. There's pullouts for inmates, county and state prison, so positive COVID-19, along with some other things. So if you strictly look at and watch the County of San Diego, the numbers that come out, and there's a whole formula on going back 7 days from the time of symptoms, and then the carve out, the numbers don't make sense. We've done the math multiple times. We have to get the state numbers, which are a little bit different than ours because of the pullouts for the prison population, and they only release those on Tuesdays. So anyone who's questioning numbers and wants to reach out to our office, we'd be happy to share the crazy math that goes along with that. And then also I made sure we provided the chamber the new San Diego County health order. Two kind of highlights are that there are name and telephone number collections for restaurants, bars, hair salons, barber shops, personal services, trying to think who else is on there, breweries. It'll be a requirement to provide a name and phone number for contact tracing anytime you use any of those services. And then also anytime you are at a bar or restaurant, there'll be a requirement to wear a mask unless you have food in front of you and are eating. So those are the two kind of major impactful changes. If you have any questions, reach out to the chamber or reach out to myself and we'll help walk you through those. And I think that there's so much going on, so please feel free to reach out to our office or to the chamber and we'll make sure we get you answers.
Thank you, Crystal. I know we're running behind, but it's so important, and thank you very much for being here and sharing that. I saw Jason Haber earlier. We like to get a representative of the city to give us a quick update. Jason, would you mind?
Sure, thanks, Teresa. I'll just mention a few items that were on last night's City Council agenda. There were updates made to the city's regulations related to density bonus, housing development, and ADU regulations that bring us into consistency and compliance with state law that was updated recently. A couple items that Brett might want to expand on and would certainly know more about the details on, but the council did take action that does directly benefit small business in Carlsbad. One, to temporarily suspend collection of fees on certain business-related permits for setting up sidewalk cafes, curb cafes, and then other outdoor displays. Some real positive there for businesses to be able to adapt and kind of respond to new restrictions related to their operations. And then second, city agreed to a sponsorship provision for a Gift Carlsbad program, a gift card program that would allow folks to purchase gift cards that help provide additional funds to local businesses. And Brett, if you want to expand on that, please do. And then the last thing I'll just mention was there was some good discussion related to review of some of our police policies and procedures and the possibility of setting up a police oversight and review board. Ultimately, the city council declined to pursue that at this time. But that was kind of an overview of action from last night, and I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you so much. So we're done with our legislative updates. Brett, was there anything burning that we needed to talk about before we close up? I know we're running behind.
Yes, I apologize that we're a little behind, but I think I have 5 really quick items that I do need to share. So I'll go really fast. First of all, thank you to everybody who participated in our State of the Community event last week and or the week prior maybe. The videos that were recorded from all the breakout sessions were emailed out yesterday. So if you were a registered participant, you should have received that email, and now you can look at the other breakouts that you might have missed because you had to participate in one versus the other. Secondly, today, hopefully today, by the end of today, all of you who are on our Government Affairs Committee will be receiving a survey that we would love for you to, a SurveyMonkey survey for you to participate in that lets us know what are your priorities when it comes to this election cycle. So we did this 2 years ago when it was the election year, and the insight that we received from the survey helps us in terms of discussing things and is also going to be published in our Carlsbad Business Journal in October. So if you could please keep your eye out on your inbox for that survey. Like I said, I hope it's out by the end of today, but maybe tomorrow. So watch for that. Thirdly, I'm going to build on what Jason Haber just talked about. The Chamber, through its Ready Carlsbad Business Alliance and in partnership with the City of Carlsbad and the Carlsbad Village Association and Visit Carlsbad, are promoting Gift Carlsbad, which is an economic stimulus program. It should go live either later today or tomorrow, and it's a promotion to try and get money into our restaurants and retailers. And the way the program works is if you go out and buy a $25 gift card to any of the participating vendors, merchants, you'll get a $5 additional gift card for free. If you buy a $40 gift card or higher to one of the participating merchants, you'll get a $10 gift card for free. And that extra money, the bonus gift cards, are coming from the Ready Carlsbad Business Alliance. And now, as passed last night at City Council, also City of Carlsbad's putting in money. And I'm also going to be going out and seeking other donors to hopefully participate in that program. So the beautiful thing about the program is the moment you buy the gift card, the retail merchant gets the money right away. You might not redeem it for 3 months, or you might redeem it the next day, but you might not redeem it for quite some time, but the merchant gets the money immediately. So as we wrap up what has traditionally been the tourist season with Labor Day on Monday, we know it hasn't been the traditional season, but even though the few tourists we have might be kind of winding down, we're trying to get some local stimulus into our economy here. So please, again, keep your eye out for that program, full release, giftcarlsbad.com, and then be generous in purchasing gift cards to support our restaurants and retailers. And Jason also mentioned the fee holiday that the City Council passed last night. This is a great program, and if you saw some negative press, like for Oak and Elixir, is going to be charged $5,000 for getting their outside stuff done. So what the City Council passed last night would actually roll that back, and they wouldn't have to, if they already paid any of those fees, they would get a refund, or if they hadn't paid them yet, they wouldn't have to pay them. So I want to give kudos to our city for being very proactive in doing that. And their leadership. And my last thing, we were very active during this legislative session on trying to combat job killer bills. And I know many of you probably took positions individually, and the chamber took positions, but I just wanted to draw your attention. There were 2 job killer bills that made it all the way through, still with that label as a job killer, and were passed by the Assembly and the Senate. The chamber is currently advocating for folks to encourage the governor to veto these 2 bills. So if you are so inclined, AB 3216 is a return to work bill, and it's very onerous. And so think of our, the Omni La Costa or the Park Hyatt Aviara, these large employers that have had a lot of people off because of COVID. The burden it places on the employers as they try to bring employees back is very onerous. And so that's what that bill is about. We're opposed to that. And then SB 1383, which was a expanded family leave package, It takes the family leave laws that were already in existence for companies 50 or more employees and brings them all the way down to companies of size 5 employees or more. This is a protective leave that it's not a paid leave, it's an unpaid, but it's a protected leave. So if you only have 5 employees and somebody takes these extended leave programs for one reason or another, you know, maternity or whatever, so you're out 20% of your workforce and you have to protect that position for that person now very long term. So it's very challenging for small employers, and this law does apply to companies all the way down to 5 employees or more. So Chamber is advocating that the governor veto both of these. I have no idea. Well, I think the likelihood of SB 1383 is very small because he really wanted this bill. I don't know about AB 3216, but we'll be sending stuff out on that. And with that, I'll be quiet.
Great. Thank you very much, Brett. This was really an excellent meeting. Thank you so much to Kristen for her wonderful overview of the propositions. I know that we went a little over, and I try to pride myself on getting us out and done quickly, but it really was wonderful, and so was the discussion. Thank you all for being courteous and engaged, and we appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next month. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everybody. Be safe.
And sorry, forgot to mention, Haley was supposed to give us an update on Marjah Akers. It's in the chat, but Marjah Akers, you know, is something the Chamber supported, and she put some update in the chat. So if you could take a look at that, save the chat, take a look at that. It's coming to Planning Commission soon. Sorry, I meant to mention that.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Be safe. Hanging in there to the end.
Thanks,
Right.
Teresa. Good job today. That was a lot. I hope I didn't step on toes too much.
No, it's fantastic. It really was wonderful. Thank you. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.